There we go.
Hello and welcome to the Electricians Guide to Everything. This is a bonus episode with Mark Allison, the forehead himself, and Beardy McBearderson, Stuart Cato. Welcome once again. I feel like before you didn't get an opportunity to talk about what you really wanted to talk about, and it's quite pertinent to the trade at the moment. So please disclose what you wanted to talk about.
Well, I thought it's quite prominent to speak about Part 8 at the moment. You know, brand new part added to the regulations, and it's throwing some interesting things out, and we'll see what actually comes in the regulations themselves.
So, for those of you who know the Monday Club, you'll know I'm probably the most technical one on the show, and yeah, the DPL Part 6 is quite important. No, I'm joking. Listen, man, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm here to learn, and that's quite important. But I've got a funny story to tell you.
Let's hear it.
It's all to do with the Fat Boy Bike Club, right? So we know I'm the founding member of the Fat Boy Bike Club, and we have different chapters all over the world.
Founding and only member.
No, don't say that. So I'll go to work. My bike's on the bike rack, and one of the straps broke. So I used the other strap, and I've got some cable ties out, as we do, and I cable tied it to the bike rack, and it was all good, perfectly fine. And I'm driving down the road now, and I turn onto what's called the Thanet Way, and it's an A road, but it's a 70-mile-an-hour A road. Driving along, and all I hear is "tunk," and then I look in my wing mirror. I'm like, "Oh!" And then all of a sudden, I say, "Bye," and it goes. And Rick's on the phone at the same time, and I'm going, "Oh no, oh!" And the bike's bouncing down the road. Cars are all swerving around it, and then it bounces over into the bush. Yeah. Fucking lost my bike on the way home from work.
No way. What are you going to do now?
Well, this is what I'm saying.
You're going to have to start running.
Listen, that's not good for a fat man's knees. What I need to do is tomorrow I've got an operation going on. It's called Operation Rescue Daddy's Bike, and we will go and get my bike. Right? So
that is never going to work. That bike is broken forever by the sounds of it.
So badly broken, I can't even tell you. It must, I swear to God, it must have bounced 15 times. And at one point, it was so high up in the air, I was like, that is going to kill someone. How no one got hurt, it bounced, no one got hurt. And it was absolutely fine, apart from my bike is in some farm field, sitting there like an idiot. And yeah, so I thought I'd share that. And Rick was howling with laughter whilst I'm going, "No, my bike!" He thought it was my motorbike, but it's not. It was my push bike. And then he's like, yeah. Then he started laughing at me. So, yes.
Oh dear, no. Rick's always there with the support, isn't he? He'd have been crying into his phone when that happened.
Well, he'd be crying into his tooth water. Because he's got a gammy tooth, and he has to put it in water at night, like dentures. Right. Anyway, listen. Let me not bring down the tone of this podcast, and let's raise it up with some intelligence. Mark, you go and get coffee. Stuart, let's crack on, bro.
Well, so, where to start, mate? Part 8.
What's it about?
It's about Part 8, Chapter 82. It's about prosumers, low voltage electrical installations.
Right.
Okay. My first issue with this is the word prosumer, because what they've gone. It's about producers and consumers. However, they've decided to
both.
Say again.
So, when you've got your solar panels on and all that stuff, and you're producing your own power.
Yep.
You might not produce enough, so you also take some off the grid as well. Is that what a prosumer is?
Yeah, that's fair enough. My slight issue with this is they've also thrown in people with battery storage. So if you've got a battery storage but no generation, you're still a prosumer. So you're not producing.
Is that a thing? Is that a thing where people like charge up a battery from? That can't be economical. Oh, but is it in case of like a power cut, or like a prepper? Would a prepper have batteries?
Yeah, so some people do that. I've got a customer who's we're just in discussion about putting battery storage in at the moment, and what he wants to do is put a couple of power walls in, charge them up over the night, and then use them to run his ground source heat pump in the daytime. So charge them up on cheap electricity, and then run the ground source on that, rather than paying the full whack in the daytime.
I'm gonna ask a dumb question. I feel like that would still be quite expensive.
Well,
and how many years would it take to save that 30p a day to pay for the Tesla Powers? What? I don't know. I'm laughing, but I might be wrong. Probably.
Yeah. Well, if you think a heat pump, they're a big old lump, and they can use 20, 30 units a day. So actually, if you're paying 15p a unit, that's a lot. It's too late on a Friday evening to work that out, mate.
It's kind of the opposite way.
That don't sound like a lot.
A lot of people use the battery storage to store the solar energy, don't they, to then use it on a night. So you're saying this guy wants to do it a bit in reverse for that and use the off-peak electricity to charge his batteries up to then run the big heat pump through the course of the day.
That's it. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, you could see that it's about 15 quid a week, just roughly speaking. He'd probably save.
To run it for 55 years to pay for the Tesla Powerwalls. Well done.
Yeah, well, there's cheaper systems, isn't there?
There's better ways of doing it. No bed.
Yeah.
No, I'm not calling you customer. No bed. Sorry, my bad.
No, that's fine. So yeah, they've decided to band in storage systems inside the prosumer thing. So you may not be producing electricity, but you're still classed as a prosumer.
Yeah.
Is the gist of the proposal in Part 8.
And is this about sharing the battery storage among people outside of your household as well, Stuart? So if you've got a Tesla Powerwall, for example, that you've charged up off your panels, you could then export that back to the network to be used by your next door neighbour.
To an extent, yeah. I think there's sort of a plan down the line to sit there and go, well, actually, if 5% of the people have got battery storage, if we allow the DNO to take 1 kilowatt out of each battery overnight, then that reduces the load on the grid. So yeah, it's a bit cagey still, but I think they're setting the groundworks for that sort of thing.
Yeah, because I've seen some people sort of raising the issue of providing overcurrent protection for going the other way, if you like, through your service head back into the grid in that scenario, and suggesting that we might not have the right protective devices there, or we could risk blowing our service fuse to our property in doing it. But there must be some sort of control to stop that ever being a possibility in the equipment that's installed. Well,
yeah, I don't think you'll ever have an issue blowing your service fuse.
No.
But actually in Part 8, they do talk about, which we'll go on to later, about an islanding mode. And you've got to design a system to allow for it to operate in reverse.
Yes.
Basically. So that does require looking at your overcurrent protection and all your protective devices, and potentially adding them onto the other end of the circuit.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Say more than right. Okay, Mark, because I'm trying to understand it. And it's going over my head. So I need you to back me up on this, bro.
Well, that's why Stuart's here. I want to learn this as well. I don't know anything about renewables as such. Neil was supposed to be here with his long head talking about it with Stuart, because they're the guys who know all about it.
Hold on. You can't be calling no one long head.
All right.
You've got long forehead, bro.
I've measured my head and it's much shorter than Neil's.
Everyone's head's much shorter than Neil's. Neil's just, do you know, back in the day, like, who knows what a proto-hominid is? So they're like before humans, like the type of half monkey people that were running about back then, yeah? So a proto-hominid, one of them was a Gigantopithecus. And
What?
it's basic. A Gigantopithecus was actually a hominid, a two-legged hominid that run about back in the day. There's like, and they look exactly like Neil.
Really?
So I think he's like a throwback from Gigantopithecus.
Wow. We'll have
Is
to
he the
rename
missing
him.
link?
There you go. And Rick's called a Cro-Magnon man. That was another proto-hominid, and they're just like they were not. They was actually more like brutish and dumb than the Neanderthal.
It looks like
you
Rick.
go.
That's the description. Just I picture Rick. Everything you just said.
But anyway, we digress again into my world of stupidity. So getting back to the conversation about exporting and importing. So we done a podcast with Jordan Brompton from My Energy.
Yep.
She's amazing in every single way possible. She is awesome. But they were talking about the grid so when they fire up a power station and stuff, it costs a load of money to sort of, is it balance a grid or something?
Yeah.
So they're talking about using the battery power, and like if you've got your car plugged in, to take a tiny bit of your power from like loads of different places, like loads of different households, tiny bit of your stored power to balance a grid.
Yes.
Is that come under the prosumer in?
It does, yeah. So they're introducing this thing called EEMS, Electrical Energy Management Systems.
Right.
And what they are predominantly designed to do is manage your load, manage your charging, your generation, and potentially what you export back to the grid. So it's basically a big management system, really.
Decent. So what is the issue with prosuming for yourself, and the prosuming in its entirety, and the specifics of part 8?
Okay, well, my only real issue was with the name, because they talk about producers, but if you've only got battery storage, you're not producing anything.
So do you feel like that name's not covering a wide enough? Do you feel like it's just a bit of a misnomer, if you like?
Yeah. It's that's just my personal opinion.
So really, what you need is a more detailed explanation around part 8. So it should categorize the different variants of storage and methods of prosuming, if you like. Well,
yes.
Well, in fact, yeah. So prosuming, it's like I'm gonna liken it to my dumb self now. So many years ago, I worked in this office, and the bird in there was called Leanne, and she was so tidy. And then the other guy was called Alan, and he was just a great guy. And we had this massive argument in the office: what constitutes several? And I was like, well, it's got to be more than 7 because I'm dumb. And she was fit and dumb. So we both agreed. But I've later found out that actually means like a couple, really, like maybe 2 or more. So several, to me, because it said several, like 7 rule, I thought that must have been it. So I was married to that for years and years. And many years later, I met up with Leanne again, and we both still thought the same. Now, I kind of feel that's similar to the prosumer argument, because prosumer sort of makes you think, well, it's prosuming, producing, consuming under one word. But actually, it's a bit of a catch-all word now, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a long-winded explanation. I shouldn't have told that story, should I?
With the battery storage, though, if you've got an 100 grand Tesla on your drive, Sam, would you be happy to use that battery and wear it out potentially faster, letting the national grid draw juice out of it?
Well, I'm going to use the Brompton argument here, and she said it's actually not a lot coming out of they're not actually using a lot. The more people that have it, the less each individual person will use. So it'd be a tiny, tiny amount, a couple of percent maximum. And the charging and discharging of a battery, it actually extends the life of the battery rather than having it just sitting full all the time. To discharge it and recharge it is actually better for the battery.
Yeah, well, but the other argument with that is if you've paid to charge that, what's going to happen when they take that back? Are they going to refund that money and then also give you a benefit on that?
No,
or
I think it's like a scheme you opt into and you get a nice little whack out of it. That's what I think she said something like that. But listen, you're talking to me. You're asking me for advice on stuff that I don't know about. But no, I think they're obviously they're not just going to take it and be like, well, thanks for that, bros. Here's your bill. I doubt it. Do you know what I mean?
But you know, I went to look at a solar job the other day actually to put in an EV charger, and they were on a scheme where they could import and export from their storage, and actually it was costing them more money. It was costing them more money to run that storage than it was before they had the PV put in and the battery storage.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. So
why?
I don't know. The customer didn't go into full details. It may be that there's a huge management fee. It may be that they're taking it back at X amount and only paying you, and you only pay 10% of that to buy it back. But either way, they said they were out of pocket. So as soon as they could, they got out of that scheme.
That seems to me like they didn't read the small print properly. Like, unless it's broken down to me and I can see a real value to me doing that.
Yeah.
And a charity. Like, I don't care about your grid. I don't care about nothing to do with you lot. Unless you're paying me, go away. That's how I am. Like with energy companies, like I don't care. Because actually I've got like a £1,500 EDF bill for some reason. I'm not even sure why. So yeah, there are other energy suppliers available. But it's a funny thing. It's a new virgin technology that is actually, what is it? There's going to be a lot of hiccups. Not hiccups, but there's going to be a lot of things missed when it first comes out. And these companies, they're going to capitalize on that because that's what they're there to do. They're there to make profit. They got thousands of staff sitting there thinking of ways to make more profit. And if they can, find a little way to earn an extra few quid, they will do it. And it's kind of buyer beware for me. If I'm gonna go out and buy a EV installation for my house, fit it myself, obviously. It's buyer beware with the plan that I sign up to. So when people say, "Oh yeah, but it's costing me more" and all that, then you're dumb. I'm sorry, you're dumb, because you're just dumb. That's the end of my
The problem I've got with that, Sam, is that it's all well and good, but a lot of these schemes, like with the solar scheme, they can go, "Oh, you're going to generate 30,000 units a year," and you go, "Okay, brilliant. That's all in the small print." You sign up to it, and they go, "Oh no, you've only generated 5." And
but that's not gambling, isn't it? That's not gambling. That's buyer beware.
But you get so many of these companies that go out there and sell these things, or there's companies that are selling batteries. They phone you up, go, "Oh, you've got solar, you need a battery," and people are going, "Yeah, okay," but actually it transpires that they've only got a small amount of generation. They may have 1 kilowatt. They're never exporting anything, so they'd never be charging their battery, but they've been told by this company that actually it'll benefit them.
But that's buyer beware, man. That's like going to a used car dealership and buying a lemon. It's on you. Like, that's a bad example. It's like going and buying a car privately out the back of Auto Trader. That shows my age. like under the £1,500 and under mark, and thinking you're buying a Ferrari, and really you've bought an MR2 with a body kit on. That's your own fault. You should have done your research, and you should have gone prepped or took an expert with you. Like, I don't.
Yeah, but
on
on the flip side, though, mate, if someone had said, "Oh yeah, here's a V5 for a Ferrari. This is that car," you know, and you check everything out, and it all looks legit, and then you get it home and it falls apart. It's a bit of a tough argument.
There is a lot of mis-selling within solar, isn't there? Definitely.
So
definitely,
these aren't like your big power companies doing this. We're talking about...
no. So this is more the small installers or energy not energy providers, corporations, small corporations that are, you know, they'll get in 100 users and go, yeah, actually, if we all club together, we can do this, blah blah blah, and it turns out they're all out of pocket.
So what would you see changed in this? Would you see a more detailed outline? Would you break down what prosumer? Would you like a definition of prosumer? Is it, or is it in there?
No, it's in there. To be honest, I think it's just my personal view on the term prosumer. You know, prosumer is a term that they've come up with to define someone who imports and exports energy, but they've gone, you're a producer and a consumer, but there's this middle grey area that you don't produce, but you're still classed as a producer. You're still classed as a prosumer.
Let's invent the word and hashtag it right now. What would you call it?
What would I call it?
Grey area?
I would call it an exsumer. So you're an exporter.
Exsumer.
An exporter and a consumer.
An exsumer. You've heard it here first. EGT have crowned that middle thing.
Grey area.
The grey area.
Exsumer.
The exsumer.
Isn't that like where you dig bodies out of the ground or something?
No, exhumed. That's exhumed.
Yeah, fair enough, Mark. I didn't think that far ahead.
The exhumer. No, I like it. The exhumer. I like it. That's it. Right. Hashtag exhumer. I'm doing it right now.
Copyright.
Do you think we're ever getting to a time where you might have, for example, a massive tower block that's in island mode permanently, with a huge battery storage plant room, solar panels all over the roof, wind turbines stuck on top, and it doesn't need a DNO connection?
No, is the long and the short of it, because the battery pack you would need to run a tower block off grid, even a battery pack to run a house off grid, would be, you know, to run it off grid 24/7 would be phenomenal.
Wait,
you know, certainly if you're looking at down solar route, because as soon as you get in the deep dark depths of winter, you're not producing anything, but you're using a lot more.
Right, yeah. I'm going to prove you wrong on that with my pub knowledge. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
Right. So I know, I'm probably not going to prove you wrong. I'm just probably going to talk rubbish as usual. Elon Musk. No, right. Tesla. Australian.
You're going to go for the battery farms?
No, in Australia, right? I seem to remember the story, right? So in Australia, they had this really, I can't remember what part, where was it? Hornsdale Power Reserve? Might have been. Anyway, there was somewhere in Australia, and Elon Musk said, right, well, it had a wonky power grid, and it's all going out of whack all the time. So Elon Musk went out there with his big brains and his big balls, and he went out there and he done a deal with him. He said, listen, I will build this in a certain amount of time, and it will fix all your problems, and it will perform to 100% of this spec and blah, blah. And if I don't, you can have it for free. My gift to you. And he went out there and he done it, and it worked. And he basically, virtual power plant outperforms expectations. See, I'm not basically Google.
Yep, it's recording again, so it says. Sorry about that.
Right, so we're back again. Knobhead Mark, living in the north, where the fucking White Walkers live, has had a power cut, like in 2020 in England.
See, Mark, this wouldn't happen if you had battery storage and
Exactly,
you're a
Stuart.
prosumer.
It almost blows my mind that we're talking about this stuff, and he's had a power cut top north.
I couldn't go into island mode. It's ironic, isn't it? If I could have gone into island mode, auto switch over.
See, Neil's house wouldn't have had a problem, but
No,
yours does.
That's it.
So what I will say is, we were talking about the virtual power plant in Australia that was built by Mr. Musk himself, and then we moved on to the time. It's a bit. So me and Cato were saying that actually probably would cost way too much to build a power plant battery storage facility for a block of flats, but somewhere like Dubai, where they've got plenty of cash to do stupid stuff like that, could do it. And they've got plenty of sun, so it'd be a no-brainer for them.
And plenty of space.
Yes, they've got a whole desert.
Yeah.
But there's no more oil left. I'm never getting into Dubai now, am I? My sister lives out there. She's always asking me to come over. And I'm like, no, not really. Not really. Not for me. It's not for me. It's weird, isn't it? Like a city in the middle of a desert. No, not Mad Max. Not going.
Fair enough.
So, Mark, what questions do you have, mate?
Well,
my shoulders are getting tired.
Yeah, so fair enough. Now, I was going to say, Stuart, we were talking about island mode. Do you have an opinion on sort of lost neutrals when you're swapping into that, and then maybe sharing in properties that are an island together? So I've seen some examples of that, where you'd have a terraced row of houses or a small system of flats, if you like, and say you lost the neutral on that sort of installation.
Yeah, I see. I was analysing this the other day, and I've been looking over Part 8, and I don't think something like that would happen with regards to the terraces. Okay, because to put them in island mode, you then need to disconnect them from the grid somewhere. So if you had 10 houses in a terrace, that means you need a disconnection point from your grid under the road, or in a cabinet somewhere. So I don't think things like that would really be an issue. To be honest, I think it's only really going to be single properties or blocks of flats. When you have a B&O, so a building network operator. Yeah. That may cause an issue, but I can't see it being sort of more. I can't remember what they call it now. Is it the collective? There's three separate bits. I think it's the.
I wouldn't ask
collective.
No, I think you're right. It is a collective. That's what they refer to it as.
Yeah. So I don't see that actually really being a thing, because you need a shut-off point for the DNO, and they're not going to go around installing those under the roads or back to main transformers, because they're never going to be able to produce enough to cover those buildings.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, I suppose, isn't it? So just jumping away from the presuming for a minute, one of the other interesting things I saw to do with Amendment 2, because it is important, I think, that if anyone who's out there listening to all this, if you can comment on the DPC, you can have your say. So if you go over to BSI and make those comments, you can have the changes done that you think are applicable, or at least suggest them. And something I picked up on the NAPIT webinar, I don't know if you've watched them, Stuart, but they mentioned about isolators for kitchen equipment, for example. So, at the minute, if we have a below-counter washing machine, tumble dryer, dishwasher, we'd fit a 20-amp isolator or an isolation point somewhere, so you could turn that off. They're saying in this amendment, it removes that requirement from the regulations. So I didn't know if that was maybe a good... Yeah. So I was surprised by that, because I've not heard that anywhere else.
No,
and I haven't been able to look back and check through it again on the webinar, because they haven't released it yet. So it's just from first watching it.
Stop. What is that beeping, bopping sound?
Or beeping?
Who's got their phone near the microphone?
Not me.
No.
Ludicrous. Go on, ask that question again, please. I'm trying to concentrate.
Was it beeping?
It's all right. It's good now.
Okay. I was going to say, so on the NAPIT webinar, they mentioned about under-counter kitchen equipment.
Sorry,
so,
Mark. Is that NAPIT or NAPIT?
Yeah, NAPIT, whatever you want. They mentioned about isolation points for them above the worktop, so you could turn them off if you needed to. They're saying in this new amendment that that's been removed, and they're accepting that the consumer unit, main switch or circuit breakers acts as that isolation point for maintenance, and you no longer need them. Now, I've not seen anyone else speak about that, and I haven't had a look myself on the amendment to try and find it, because I was waiting to re-watch the webinar again once it's released, because that was something that I thought was probably a step backwards.
Yeah, that seems a bit odd to me, to be honest. You know, it's good practice. It's helpful to have that point. You know, I know customers, certainly older customers, who like to be able to turn that off at night, or you know, when they go away, they like to be able to isolate it.
Yeah, I guess they're not prohibiting it.
Yeah, and also if you have an issue with it, you know, I've certainly had problems with the washing machine or the dishwasher, and it's great to be able to isolate that one unit and go, right, let's get that out, let's fix it, and not lose everything in the kitchen, because you certainly get an earful from the wife.
You would, wouldn't you? So, yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that I thought I might comment on, away from all this stuff everyone's talking about, if that ends up being true. So yeah, again, just going back to that, if anyone is reading all this stuff and they do want to comment, I think it's important that we do. And there's every chance that this might end up being the most commented amendment to the regulations ever, because there's a lot of people saying the same thing now with social media and everything. Hopefully people do go and have their say. It's your chance to guide the regulations at the end of the day.
Well,
yeah, well,
go on, mate.
So go on. I was going to say, I think as well, there's so much new stuff coming in there. You know, we've got Part 8, and we've also got what is it foundation earthing that they're talking about?
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother kettle of fish. And there just seems to be so much going in there.
Earthing? Come on, fucking, I don't know. What is foundation earthing?
So they're talking about having to earth if you've got rebar and reinforcement in your foundations.
Yeah.
That you have to have a point of connection to the earth. Is that right, Mark? Am I going down the right lines there?
No, that is right. So they're saying you can utilise the rebar that's in the foundations of the property as an earth, and even earth grids as well outside, so on driveways and things. And I guess that's to help with the EV charging as well, if you've got a reference potential on the installation to the mass of earth in and around the property.
So you don't have to earth. You don't have to earth it because it could become live. You can use it as an earth.
I think it improves your earth as a whole, as far as I understand it. They're saying you have to have access to it. You have to make a joint, and yeah, it's all a bit weird. I think it's about creating when they talk about touch voltage or step voltages and all this sort of stuff, and they're trying to eliminate those kinds of things. And you know, the more and more we take out of the building by EV chargers, we've got a lot of issues going on there.
I mean, it makes sense. If you've got a great big mesh of metal that's in the ground on the property, you might as well use it for an earth. Why not?
So could you not do that before? You couldn't come up with the idea and be like, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use the earthing. I'm going to use the rebar and the foundations to do the earthing. That'll work. Was you not allowed to do that?
Well, I don't think you can use it as an independent earth.
Okay, but now you can.
Well, I'm still not sure now. That's the bit I haven't looked over it fully on that side of life. But there is talk about having to do it, and
yeah, I don't think it's leaning towards it being the sole means of earth, but it is to be part of the earthing system. That's on new build property. If this comes into force, that the rebar in the ground and the earthing grids as well that you might have to install would all be part of the earthing system. So you'd still have your DNO's earth and all of your bonding to incoming supply services, and it's just that equipotential zone, if you like, it's extending it slightly.
Did you just say equipotential?
I did on your podcast as well.
Oh, we sound so scientific tonight. I've been dropping knowledge like a World War II plane dropping bombs. Bop, 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 bop. I've just been unloading knowledge about Gigantopithecus, about Elon Musk out in. Listen, I'm basically Google without the search engine.
You've certainly educated me tonight, definitely.
Yeah.
So lads,
go on. But Mark, going on to earthing arrangements, going back to part 8, there's a whole thing that you've got to disconnect from the mains or the DNO Earth.
Yes.
If you go into islanding mode.
Yes.
So you've got to disconnect, which means you've got to provide a TT supply for that temporary system. But then you look at it and go, well, if I've got to do a design for the TNS or TNCS and for the TT side of life, why don't we just make the whole system TT and go down that route? And I think that could potentially, a lot of installations will go back to TT supplies.
What about pen faults?
Well, yeah.
That's your default answer to anything about earthing now, isn't it? What about pen faults?
Wait, was I right though?
It's a factor.
Because you won't have a pen fault if you've got a TT supply, will you?
This is true.
I don't know.
So at the minute,
listen, this electrician. Go on.
At the minute, Stuart, if you've got a switch over between these TN and TT systems, how do you do it instantaneously? Surely there is even with a changeover switch, there is a period between one and the other. Is it?
Yeah, I think a lot of them work with interlocked switches, so they have 2 switches, and one will only kick in when the other one's kicked out.
Yeah.
I know the Powerwall gateway has that function, so it shuts off when it detects the grid is gone. It shuts off and then turns onto the battery side of life. But also there's the fact that if you do that, you have to connect the neutral to the earth.
Yeah. And that obviously can't be in place on TN system, so it's doing it quickly enough.
Yes. Yeah,
definitely. Why are you laughing, bro? I'm in the conversation.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's all part of the actual application of the regulations. That's what we're always left trying to solve as sparks on the ground. These people sit and write all these rules for us to follow, and then how do we actually make it happen so end users are pissed off when stuff stops working how it should?
Yeah. But do you know what? One of the good things I like about part 8 and chapter 82 is actually on first reading, you look at it and go, wow, that's a lot to take in. But the more you dive into it, you sit there and go, a lot of this is already in place. So things like the Powerwall already go into islanding mode, PV already do direct feed and reverse feeding mode. Things like the EAMS, the energy, electrical energy management systems are already taken care of by things like the ZAPI. They monitor the loads, and in fact, a lot of the PV systems like Solar Edge, you can run that through a management system, and that looks what your loads are doing and determines what it wants to do. And so actually a lot of these points that have been brought up by part 8 are actually already in place and already in service. So it's just giving a definition to what's already happening.
Yeah, see, when I started speaking to you a couple of weeks ago, because this was all, I thought, Jesus, a whole new section of the regs, this is going to be far too complicated. And you actually said a lot of this is already in place, and it's just kind of pulling it together into the regs book so we can reference to it as electricians, I guess. Is that the purpose of it? Do you think that it's just putting it all in one place so it's easier for the everyday electrician who's getting involved with EV and battery systems now to have all that knowledge in the book itself?
Yeah, definitely. It's giving a point of reference so that sparks know what they're doing. You know, a lot of this is still going to be specialist, you know, for specialist installations. But there's, you know, they've added a few bits like having overcurrent protection on both streams, if for want of a better word. So if you had a PV installation that's on a sub main, you would need overcurrent protection, or from my interpretation of the Part 8, you would need a overcurrent protection on the normal supply. But if you're to go into islanding mode, you'd also need overcurrent on the other end to back feed through to the system.
Yeah. And that's a complicated system to get set up, isn't it? It's not something that's straightforward.
Yeah, backfeeding and all that. Yeah. What?
Yeah. No, I get where you're coming from, Sam, and you know I'm looking at it from a PV installer side of life, and you know we've got 12, 13 years of experience with this sort of thing, but the amount of calls we get from Sparks who go, I've been asked to go look at, you know, doing an EICR, or I've got to have a look at this, but I don't know anything about the PV. Can you come and look at the PV side? So
yeah, I think you made a valid point there, actually, because if you've never been exposed to a PV system, like myself, never even seen one in the flesh, seen one on the outside of a house, but that's about it. So if I was asked to go and look at it, I'd be out of my depth. I can apply the general knowledge of, you know, the general theory of electrical installation to it, but really and truly, if I need to get into it in any in-depth way, there's so many nuances that I'd be completely out of my depth, and I'd have to go away and research it, and I probably wouldn't do that, and I would probably just never go back to the job. But do you see like a bit of a split going on there in the industry, or do you think it's a matter of education in the apprentice stage, bringing in some more basic understanding of PV, or do you feel like it's on electricians tonight?
It's a tricky one, to be honest, because actually there's a lot of stuff relating to PV and the electrical side of PV that I don't think is covered in the regulations. So regulations, you know, Part 7, I can't remember what it is now. Is it Chapter 22 or
Yeah,
Chapter 12?
Yeah, Chapter 22.
Somewhere around there, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah.
So one of those chapters talks about PV, but actually, from electricians and a PV installer's point of view, personally, I think it's quite lacking in information. So even if you wanted to go look at a PV system, and you said, you know what, I'm going to read that chapter, you'll look at it and go, that's all gobbledygook.
You know what I do?
You know? Yeah. And
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, so I think there is a sort of a knowledge gap, and it's quite tricky because, you know, Sparks who've just got apprentices who never touch this thing are never going to show their apprentices that. They're never going to tell them that. They're never going to learn that. The colleges are never going to teach them that.
No.
And so, you know, they'll go out into the big wide world and go, it's a PV system. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's like me. I've never been exposed to it. How am I meant to know? Am I meant to? For me, I probably wouldn't come across a job that I'd need to know it, because often on like on a job that I would be on, they'd probably have a subcontractor that deals just with that system, or you would be doing a very small part of a big system. So you'd only be doing like taking the power supply to where it never needs to go and a bit of containment. My need to know it is probably means I wouldn't go out and learn it just for curiosity. I would have no practical application for it. But if I was a house basher, a domestic installer, I think it's something I'd probably need to know, because it's going to become more and more popular as we go on. Certainly, don't know with car chargers and stuff like that, there's also a number of different problems that can happen from that as well.
Well, that's another example. You know, that's a little specialist market. You know, and the amount of EV, because we do EV as well, the amount of EV chargers we see that have been installed by someone going, "Yeah, I know how to do that. I've read the regulations," and actually it doesn't comply.
No,
because they haven't done the further training. So
there's going to be a load of electricians out there listening to this thinking, you know what are they talking about? That is of no interest to me. And that's fair enough. But I think for those domestic installers and people like that, it's something you're probably going to have to learn, isn't it? It's probably something you're going to have to get under your belt.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say, we need to either decide if we're going to do this through the apprenticeship system, as you said, Sam. So we're going to change that drastically because the industry's changed quite rapidly recently. So we're going to start including things like EV charging, smart home, PV, solar generation and battery storage into the apprenticeship system and strip out some of the stuff that's been there historically and put this in its place. Or are we going to have specialist training after you've qualified as a practicing electrician, such as the Art of Smart training centre that we've seen pop up, and you can go and do your solar training, the EV training? Is it going to stay like that, or are we going to start teaching it at grassroots so everyone has a baseline understanding of it from the beginning?
It's funny actually, because it's like a constant question in the industry. What is an electrician's job? What makes an electrician and stuff like that? But actually, I've said this a million times on the old Electricians Guides to Everything podcasts, and that is, we live in the most unique of times in all of human history. Honestly, we've got all of the world's information at our fingertips at pretty much any time of the day. So to the opportunity to learn, the people pumping out free content everywhere. Do you know what I mean about this? Okay, some of it might be a bit moody, but some of it might be, but a lot of it, I say some of it, a lot of it is by genuinely smart, articulate, and well-read people that are putting the information out in a digestible form. And it's just a fantastic time to be an electrician. If you need to level up, if you need to become better at something, if you need to take on this knowledge, Stuart, where would you go to get this knowledge?
What, for PV and EV and stuff?
Yes, mate.
Okay, so, well, I bit the bullet and I did the full training courses. So, PV, we jumped on that bandwagon about 12 years ago, and we went out and training. And at that stage, it was a little bit sketchy actually, because the training courses were about installing the PV, but not about the electrics. And there was no real clear guidance on the electrics. So it was a bit sort of cobbling it all together, for want of a better word. But, it's trying to find a reliable source of information. If you're not going to go to the training courses, you need to understand where you can get that information, but you also need to understand your limits. The amount of times we see... Yeah, the amount of times we see Sparkies who have gone into a PV system and gone, yeah, we could deal with that. And they absolutely wreck it. They destroy it. So
take Neil, for example. He is, well, he does well, but I don't know why, because he's not that smart. He's got a massive head, but his skull's 3 inches thick, so he's actually got a brain about that. But he went out and he immersed himself in the world of YouTube and online information wherever he could find it, and he went down the rabbit hole of finding out about solar PV and all that stuff, electric cars a lot, and now he thinks he's an expert. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, do you know what? Do you know what? Neil's knowledge is very good, and we had a lot of conversations about PV and how it works and these sorts of things, because we were talking about putting it on his place. But there's certainly, like you say, there's a lot of very intelligent people putting out content for free, about this kind of stuff, and you can pick that up. My only concern with that is that, you know, it's like these short courses. You could sit there and go, well, I've watched 10 videos on YouTube about PV. I'm a PV installer now.
That's an excellent point. Don't listen to me. Go and do a proper course.
No, I'm not saying that, Sam. But there's some, you know, you've got to separate the good stuff from the dross, and yeah, it's a bit tricky. But and the thing is, that good installers and good electricians will always give their information for free. You know, people ask me all the time. They phone me up, say, I've got a PV job that's doing this. I say, okay, just do that, or just do that. You know, prime example, I had a WhatsApp message from someone the other day about a PV job. And
Good, Mark Allison.
yeah, but yeah, you know, the good guys out there will always share the information.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing is as well, is I've always got someone I can phone who knows about something. I've phoned many of these guys before. I've even asked Mark how to do two-way switching before. No, I'm joking. I'm not. But no, that's a great thing about today. Certainly in our little circle. Well, I say little circle, but I mean, I've phoned Gary Hayes for advice before. I phoned Neil Large Head Tiny Brain Bridgman, Mark, Rick, you know, you name Nick Bundy, Dave O'Savo. I phoned Dave O'Savo once because we had a fault in one of the hotel rooms, and it was just absolutely, I don't know, all the LED lights were doing disco lighting, and we tried to rule out every single thing, and he done a really good video on it about induction or some. Anyway, I don't know. I'm way too dumb to follow his videos. So I phoned him to ask him. And so there's people out there you can ask. There's always someone you can ask.
Yeah.
But go and do the training course. And that was me talking, that was me name dropping like a massive dickhead.
No, but it's important, isn't it? Because you say about all of that, but we have an industry movement. I think Gary started it, of better together. And I think that's something we can all certainly embrace, that if we work together, effectively, we can help each other in all sorts of things. I mean, Stuart's the expert in solar PV. There's other people. We can ask Neil about push along trains and stuff. If any of us ever get stuck on a railway, you know, it's always better if we are helping each other. I think that's really important.
Yes. Right. Let's wrap this up, lads. Cato, Beardy McBeardison, how have you got anything to add to close out on?
Do you know what, mate? I don't think so. To be honest, I had a load of notes. I think we covered most of it. But it's,
is that a set of nunchucks in the back behind you?
Where?
Behind your head?
Yeah.
Which way?
That picture. Yeah. What is that?
There.
Yeah.
No, that's a clip I've got. I've got a big set of A1 plans for a job I'm working on set up behind me.
Oh, it does a little bit like nunchucks.
It does. It does from here.
Well, fair enough, mate. But
Marco, forehead. What are you saying? What are we doing? What are we closing out on?
I just think if anybody's got a comment to make on this DBC, go over and do it on the BSI website. This is the time we can all get our thoughts and opinions involved and potentially change the regulations to a version that we would like to see. So go and do it.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Right. It's been a pleasure. Friday night podcasting, how my life has changed. Have a great one, lads, and